Kenya sio ya wanasiasa. Kenya sio ya watu wachache. Kenya ni ya kila Mkenya. Awe ni mtu ya kuuza mboga, awe ni mtu wa bodaboda, awe ni makanga, awe ni mfanyabiashara, awe ni mkulima. Kenya ni yetu sisi zote. Na hakuna mtu anapaswa kushurutisha Wakenya wengine kwamba itafanyika hivi, mpende msipende, itafanyika sijui siku gani, mpende msipende. Hiyo lugha ya mpende msipende, jameni, pelekeni kwingine. Kenya ni nchi ya demokrasia, kila mwananchi atapatiwa nafasi maoni yake isikike.
Najua nyinyi watu wa sana sana hapa Israel ni watu wa ajabu. Natembeanga hapa naona Mkikuyu anapika githeri kwa barabara, Mjaruo anapika samaki, Mkaba anapika mudhokoi, mnanunua ya huyu na huyu na huyu na familia inakula. So me, I don't think you need BBI hapa sababu already you practice BBI.
By preaching hate and conflict during BBI mazungumzo, Your Excellency, it is important that we remind Kenyans that this nation belongs to God. This nation does not belong to the politicians.
Your Excellency, hiyo bus ina break, inaendeshwa na mtu ya rege, sisi kuingia huko tutakuwa na shida. Mutaingia hiyo basi nyinyi? Tena anatuambia jana ati lazima hii maneno tumalize mwezi ya 3 tuende referendum. Nyinyi mmesoma BBI? Kwani tutaunga kitu mkono kitu hatujui? There is no BBI we can support when we don't know what it is.
Na mimi nauliza swali moja. If BBI could not unite Moses Kuria and Charity Ngilo in Kitui Rally so that they can share a podium peacefully, how will it unite 50 million Kenyans?
Hii mambo ingine yote tunaambiwa hatuna haraka. Ati BBI lazima tupige kura mwezi wa pili, mwezi wa 3. Hakuna kitu kama hiyo. Sisi tunasema kwanza tutafunzwa vizuri, watu wa Kenya wajue BBI ni nini, nini iko ndani, alafu ndio tutakubaliana kama tunaenda referendum ama atuende.
Well, those are some of the allies of the Deputy President William Ruto, and he himself speaking on the BBI. For that, though, or to unpack that, I'm joined by Martin Andati, political and governance commentator. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Good evening. Happy New Year. It qualifies because I'm having you for the first time 2020.
Happy old New Year.
And on my immediate right is the former Nairobi County Deputy Governor, Jonathan Mweke. Honorable, I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming. Starting off with you, Martin. What we have heard appears that the DP William Ruto and his allies, as they did across the country, are singing from the same political hymn sheet. And in that particular regard, they seem to see sort of political heavy-handedness from Odinga and his sort of political predator approach. To distill that down, is it factually correct? And or shouldn't it get the much-needed attention of the case that they are trying to make politically?
You know, the issues in BBI have not come out clearly. They said they will do translation in vernacular for those who are not able to read and
so far we have the
understand
Swahili
English.
version.
Yeah, the Swahili version, but not everybody understands Swahili and English. 2, they have not done enough sensitization. Then 3, they said they were validating the report. So before the validation is complete, now they are talking about referendum. So you see that raises questions.
The referendum, to be specific, from
in
the
March,
ODM party
because
leader, Raila Odinga.
Of course, he's one of the partners of the initiators of the BBI. So there are questions. Do we have a budget for a referendum? Do we even have a referendum law? There are issues. So have we finished? The task force mandate was extended just the other day, so it's hardly a month. So have they finished the work that the president gave them to do? So those are some of the gray areas that we need to address before we talk about a referendum. Of course, there is a general agreement that there are issues, and those issues need to be addressed. You know, we are all agreeing, and some of the issues you don't even need a referendum, because like national cohesion, you know, we have appointments which have been made, and which are still being made, which are not reflecting the face of this country.
Which is
and some of those issues are just administrative, you know.
Okay.
So even with under the current constitution, we can have the president effecting some of the issues, like the economic issues. You don't need BBI to address them, you know. But it's good that we are having a national conversation around all these issues. But, you know, basically, most of the issues that we need to address, they were captured under what Kofi Annan called the Agenda 4 issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was after mediating talks between President Kibaki and Raila Odinga, then after the ugly spectre that engulfed the country. Honorable Jonathan Mweke, their coming together was equally globally uploaded. I'm talking about Kenyatta and Odinga. They went to Washington and outlined its importance, how it restored political sanity in the country following uncertainties in regards to the 2017 elections. But how will the consensus of words of Kenyatta and Odinga translate to consensus of action, political stability, economic stability, social stability for posterity?
Ayub, it's very nice to be with you in studio again. The BBI question, the principles of it are good.
Okay.
And if you read the BBI, there's a lot of things within the BBI that if implemented, as we know it today, I agree with Martin, that it's not final yet. The hearings are still happening. You've seen they've been at KICC. But if you really look at a lot of those things within BBI, if implemented, that'd be very good for our country. I think what we need to focus on is doing the things we say we are going to do. And if I just give a very brief history, because a lot of these things in the BBI have already been taken care of.
Okay.
In 1991, you know, the multi-party, single party was revoked and multi-party came in.
After the repeal of the Section 2A.
Repeal of the Section 2A, yeah. That allowed us to have very many parties. If you come now, we're almost 20 years later, actually 30 years later.
Almost 30, yeah.
Yeah. Look at out of the 60 political parties, really only about 2 of them are truly national, Jubilee and ODM. The rest are regional parties that really talk about regional politics.
Okay.
Yeah, so tribalism has not gone away 30 years after we were given the chance to do that. Then if you came to post-election violence in 2008, we fought. We called in Kofi Annan. Kofi Annan came in and gave us something called Agenda 4. I can tell you about 80% of what's in BBI is in Agenda 4.
And equally the 2010 Constitution, the social contract.
Yes, so talk about electoral violence, Waki report.
Okay.
Talk about electoral malpractice, there's the Kriegler report.
Okay.
Talk about land.
The Ndungu report.
The Ndungu report came out.
And the Jonjo report.
Yeah, and the Jonjo report. You know, so a lot of these things are already there. So why can't we unpack the issues and say, guys, instead of going through this very expensive BBI process, we agree on the fundamentals.
Okay.
The BBI is saying we need to talk about youth issues. Yeah, that was in Kofi Annan's Agenda 4. Can we go back to that Agenda 4 and take care of those youth issues? And whatever now that's not taken care of in that report, then now you can have BBI to add on. If you look at Article 10 of our Constitution, it deals exclusively with national ethos, which is the second thing that BBI is talking about.
Outlined in the 9-point agenda.
Yes, national ethos. That is in our Constitution 2010, Article 10. It talks about national ethos and it tells you how we should behave as citizens of this country.
Okay.
We've not implemented that. If you look at devolution, which is in the BBI, there is the Schedule 4 of the Constitution.
The devolved system of governance.
That just shows how you should devolve everything. And Chapter 11 talks about devolution. We've not implemented that because we still have functions that should be done by the county that are the national government. We still, you saw the other day, counties, the Senate fighting with the National Assembly of
on the
money
county
until
budget.
there's almost a shutdown.
Revenue,
Division of revenue. But BBI is here saying that, you know, we're going to give the counties all this money. But we saw the president say there's no money. So where will it come from all of a sudden in 2 months when we have a referendum? So we have to look at these things very objectively. The principle is great. The things within the BBI are great. My only worry as a leader who loves this country very much is if we can't implement all these other things that are there for us to implement for the last 30 years, what makes us think we will implement BBI?
Okay, I'm sure then that you seem to be having some sort of doubt, though on the principal point, we agree on the content. But the point is that there's worry as to the energy accorded at the moment, this particular BBI process. But if I may then come to your important point, your party leader and his deputy Farah Maalim yesterday appeared before the BBI steering committee, and they called for a strong parliamentary system of governance. And what we have had in this country is the extent of the political damage done to Kenya after every electoral cycle, and the lack of commitment of the political establishment, especially under the presidential system of governance. Can that be the point with which we depart from the violence that mars this country after every electoral cycle?
Well, the proposal in BBI is to have a prime minister and 2 deputies.
Appointed by the president now.
Appointed by the
who
president.
Can be censured by parliament.
Correct. How different is that from the Grand Coalition government? Because after Kofi Annan left, I think it was Agenda 1 of the Grand Coalition government, the president appointed prime minister, who was passed by parliament.
With
the
two deputies.
Yeah, the cabinet ministers were MPs, just like BBI is saying. So can we go back and look at the Grand Coalition government and say, okay, what is it did we think this system of governance is going to change? And why didn't it change then? Because we're just saying, let's go back to 2008. We did have the exact same system of governance at the executive level from 2008 to 2010. So, and then in 2013, under that same system, we fought. Yeah, so I think we need to go a little deeper and commit ourselves. It's really called political will. Right? If we have the political will to fix our issues, we already know what the issues are. I think the issues that are in BBI are already documented in other documents. Can we show the goodwill to start implementing those? I'll give you some other examples that my friend Martin here just said. What needs a referendum in the BBI is maybe just 10%. Okay,
90% meaning?
90%, you can do it either through legislation or government policy.
Which is parliament.
I can tell you, when the president gave his speech in January 14th this year, it was a lovely speech when he was reorganizing his government.
Yes.
He implemented BBI on 2 fronts. The first front was Utamaduni Day. Yeah, he said 26th becomes Utamaduni Day. That's in BBI. The president implemented it without a referendum. If you look at the second one, he says that NIS should go into all government institutions and break up the cartels. That's a presidential directive. That is in BBI. So you can implement BBI, most of it, without a referendum. So let's not wait until September or June or March for a referendum. Let's start implementing those things now.
Sawa sawa. Honorable Mweke, I'll come to Martin shortly, but allow me to pick this phone call from a guest who ought to be joining us here, or ought to be on set here. That is Professor Edward Kisiangani, who commentates on political affairs. Good evening, Professor. I hope you're getting me well. Talking about the BBI, which is the specific point that we are turning our attention on. Talk to me about the...
Check your sound properly. It is coming, but it's not too clear.
Okay, I'm getting you right. I guess we have now effective communication channel on your end.
Yes, I can get you now.
Okay, we are talking about the degree of fragmentation caused by the Building Bridges initiative. The divisions apparently very present ever since the coming together of President Kenyatta and the opposition chief Raila Odinga. More on that is the process underpinned by politics ever since March 2018. Talk to me on the Jubilee Party front. Can it hold up? And talk to me on the unity. Will this serve the purpose intended by the 2 principals, President Kenyatta and the opposition chief Raila Odinga?
Where we are, up to where we are now, I don't think that the initiative is serving to bring peace and unity as initially envisaged. As you can see, every time that we talk about BBI, 2 or 3 more factions emerge. Each one of them saying they probably are not included in the program. Each one accusing the other of a different intention. And so because of that, we are in a situation where the blame game has begun and we have lost the original objective of uniting Kenyans. So we need to go back to the drawing board I think the initiative to unite the people of Kenya was good by the president and his friend Raila Odinga. That was not a bad idea, but one of the things that didn't seem to work properly is that although the president and the former prime minister initiated the move, there was a expectation that they would bring many people on board, especially within the political divide, and bring in the likes of Musalia Mudavadi, the likes of Wetangula, the likes of Kalonzo. But it took too long for these guys to be brought on board. And in fact, when the launch of the program, where the report was done at Bomas, that's when we started seeing these other politicians coming in. And when it happened like that, there was a crisis of legitimacy, whether or not the process was inclusive. Also, there has been a concern that maybe the president's friends were on the BBI team. The prime minister's friends were on the BBI team, and there was not so much inclusivity, politically speaking, where you would have wished to have more people from different political formations. You only have people who seem to pay loyal, to come from the background of the president's political wing and, of course, the prime minister's political wing. And in that case, therefore, the legitimate problem is whether or not these guys will bring on board all the views that will be given by Kenyans.
Okay.
So, from that perspective alone, my brother, we are in a situation where we have legitimate problems. And then the other groups that were complaining about this legitimacy issue found themselves in a confrontation with the group led by the president and the prime minister.
Okay.
Because this group, like the ones in the president's party, is leaning towards a different faction. The guys in Fort Kenya, guys in ANC, started asking, this president did not involve us. So in that case, what do you want us to do? And in the process now, name calling started. The people started dropping names. And then others accusing others of not wanting unity. The president's team and the prime minister's team saying that, those who don't want this project, it must go on. And if you don't like it, you don't want to bring unity in Kenya. But the other one saying that, okay, your program, since it was exclusive, you probably set up a stage to fight those you don't like politically.
Okay.
So we have reached a point where we are not able to bring unity. If you look at the television debates that are going on, you look at the material on social media, Twitter, WhatsApp, people are sending messages that reflect this unity, not unity, because they think that the BBI project is meant to fight the certain political figures within the country.
Who, to be specific?
In the end, you don't end up with a good project. So where we are, to make the long story short, we are not in a position to say whether this BBI is going to give us unity. Where we are, we have a lot of disunity. People are withdrawing into their ethnic cocoons and even working to support their political, their ethnic group against another ethnic group. I think we need to go back to the drawing board and just say, where have we gone wrong with the process? Because the idea was noble, but then the way the process has been carried out, there is a problem, and this problem is aggravating disunity instead of bringing about unity of the people of Kenya.
Okay, thank you, Prof. But before I let you go, you talked about, to be specific, when you said in the analysis of the information across the social media platforms, to be specific, Kenyans are disgruntled lot on the exclusion of some and the coming together of Kenyatta and Odinga as serving certain specific purpose. Who in this particular scenario is being taken out of the equation politically?
Where that? Hello?
Yes, I'm getting you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I didn't get you properly. Your voice is so constricted. But let me just get it again.
Okay, the point was that you mentioned the aspect of exclusion here in terms of social media information that Kenyans have expressed concern about the coming together of Kenyatta and Odinga and excluding some certain political figures. Who, to be specific, do you feel has been left out of the political equation?
in the political equation, there are people who think that that the BBI was probably meant to exclude the Deputy President William Ruto from ascending to power, and that was unfortunate because the way the process started, many people thought that it should be about unity, but now increasingly you could see even from political rallies that some people are saying, you know what, we are starting this BBI so that we fight corruption, and the most corrupt person in this country is the Deputy President. Now, when you hear that kind of statement, and the Deputy President has also his own supporters, it puts his supporters on the defensive. And then it also raises questions like the people who are pointing out names who are accusing others of having been corrupt. You also want now to create a stage where you have now to investigate them and then say, is it true that the ones who are telling us the Deputy President is corrupt are not corrupt? So who is clean? Now, when you start asking like that, you know, you have completely lost the main focus of BBI, which was to unite the people. So there is a group within the Prime Minister and the President's team who are probably thinking that if we have BBI going the way it is going, then they will have maybe Raila Odinga take power. Maybe that's within their imagination, and it's not true, and maybe it's not the intention of the former Prime Minister that he becomes the president through BBI. But then, you know, these are interpretations that are coming from their supporters, and there is no attempt to bring these supporters of different factions together. You have seen what Musalia Mudavadi has said when he came to present his report to the BBI. He was categorical about certain things. He doesn't want, he wants a presidential system, and he does not want a president, a prime minister appointed by a president, and a prime minister who is more powerful than the president who is appointing him, or who is going to compete with the president. These are things that you now realize that there are people who have certain feelings, and they think that maybe the process is not all-inclusive. And so it means we must go back to the drawing board. That is the bottom line I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Go back to the drawing board and make this process as a little more inclusive. I would like you to understand this point very clearly, that when a few weeks ago, some people who had attended BBI meetings in Kisii alleged on national television that they were called to be delegates just about 2 days or 1 day before the KISS meeting. And they went to a meeting where they were briefed by a certain politician about BBI, and they were told not to oppose anything. Then the following day, there is a meeting in Kisii, and in the meeting in Kisii, resolutions are passed. Even in terms of legitimacy, you need to know, where are these delegates coming from? Where are the delegates coming from? How do we choose delegates? If we remember the Bomas draft, you know that the Bomas draft had delegates from the villages, and there was a process of choosing delegates. But these are delegates who have come up, and they seem to be delegates representing particular people within the political formation. So therefore, are they bringing the views of the people, or are they bringing the views of those politicians? Then you have the problem of the report itself. We are being told that the team that is going to check out for the second time, which is the same team actually, is going to do validation.
Asante.
In the research terms, my brother,
yes,
when you go to do validation and you want to confirm what was given before, you go to the same respondents. Instead of going to the same respondents, now they are bringing in new people with new ideas. So is that validation? In the research terms, that's not validation.
Thank you so much, Professor. Hope to have you next week, hopefully, in the morning show. Asante sana for your input into the program, and we hit the break on News Compass. When we come back, we'll finish up on the second segment of the program to take the sentiments of Martin Andati and the former Nairobi County Deputy Governor Jonathan Mweke here on the program, and we'll continue with the discussion after the break here on News Compass. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the program. We now sample some of your feedback on Twitter before I get to Martin Andati to give his comments. And this is in regard to the discussion that we are having. To just sample some too. This is from I'm Kenyan, he says. I'm concerned about the developments in the country in regard to what continues to transpire in the form of BBI. Can it restore sanity politically, or it's just a coming together of the two gentlemen? He's talking about President Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga together. What more can we do when all this is happening in the country in the name of political players? That's according to Winnie Liria on Twitter. She says that this is just recycling of leaders, talking about the Health Cabinet Secretary nominee Mutahi Kagwe, and why not the new competent Kenyan faces across the country for purposes of inclusivity, as mentioned, she says, in the Building Bridges Initiative report. Thank you for the feedback on Twitter using the hashtag News Compass. Coming to you though, Martin and Dati. The professor mentioned the aspect of legitimacy here that ought to be, crowned on the Building Bridges Initiative itself. And the concern is that from the analytical perspective, I want to hear a sentiment here that we at some point had in 2006 the Committee of Eminent Persons that handed over a report a year before the elections in 2007. And the year next year, that is 2007, we had the post-election skirmishes. Talking about the ugly spectre which engulfed the country. What are the assurances and guarantees that we are in safe and steady pair hands of Kenyatta and Odinga? And what are the assurances and the guarantees in regard to the political restoration of sanity after every cycle? Because that is our emanation point of all the problems that bedevil the country.
You know, as long as we are scratching the surface, the issues will not go away. The two gentlemen, the president and the former prime minister, said they were trying to heal the historical
injustices,
problems which were started by their fathers. But you know, have they really gone deep and found out where we actually lost it?
Are we rewriting history instead of addressing issues head?
They are scratching on the surface, because when we got independence, we had a parliamentary system. Odinga conspired with Mboya and Kenyatta to abolish Majimbo and kill regional assemblies.
That was in 1964.
1964. And they made Kenyatta president without us going to elections. So you see, that's where we started it. They also had a cabinet. It was fairly national, but the two communities which were predominantly Kano got more slots than everybody else, both in cabinet and in the civil service. And that trend continued until when Odinga fell out with Kenyatta. So the Luos were marginalized. So you see, the rest of the communities were not on the eating table. Of course, Moi came in after the things changed, and he also now had to try and bring in the other communities short term, then ultimately bring in now his Kalenjin guys to eat. So all those issues have not been properly addressed.
So it means the problems of 1964,
they are very deep,
Moi leadership,
all these issues, yes.
Then how do we address this issue head-on? Because we seem to be rewriting history instead of addressing the deep underlying problems.
But you know, the remedy would lie in what we have just talked about. Go back to those commissions. Kofi Annan identified those issues very well. You know, youth unemployment, the issue of the land equation.
Police reforms.
The police reforms we started, then what happened? We backtracked. The powers that the Kavludi Commission had are not what the current commission has. You see, even the current chair of the National Police Service Commission is in office illegally, because the law says a former policeman should not be chair. You have a former policeman, Kinuthia, being chair. So, you know, all these things. The IG was supposed to be an independent office. Those powers, we whittled them and gave them back to the president. You know? So we have, we make a few steps forward, we make more backwards. And there is a lot of dishonesty. And you know, you don't build one bridge and demolish another. Because Uhuru and Ruto had come together, courtesy of trying to build bridges. But now, after you've done that, now you bring in Raila, and then you exclude the other ones. So you see, it raises a suspicion. And then the statements, I mean, even after the two guys met, they should have, and that's what the point Kisengani was raising, you know, they should have immediately tried to reach out to these other guys. Bring in Ruto,
but
bring in...
Ruto said Odinga approached him 3 times before the handshake happened. So
yeah, that is true, but you know, it would have been improper for Ruto to go and start engaging in discussions with Raila after Raila had just lost election. because that will be seen like you are undermining the boss, who is the president, you know. So it would not have been prudent for him to engage.
And he feels
that
undermined at the moment.
Of course, he feels excluded because, you know, basically what is happening is a repeat of 2005. It is us versus them. So look, Ruto the other side. Then have this other team, this other side. But you know, Ruto has seen that trick. So he is now saying, look, I'm not going. Of course, he is also speaking from both sides of his mouth. On one hand, he says he fully supports BBI.
Okay.
But then on the other side, his MPs are saying they are not supporting. So, you know, the double speak. There is a lot of dishonesty on both sides of the political divide.
Okay.
So these ones want to use this one, the referendum, to build momentum. And BBI now will be turned into BBC, a broad-based coalition. Create enough seats because Raila duped Kalonzo and Wetangula. He has duped them twice. Through court. 2013
in court.
Yeah, and even in 2017, and now Musalia. So, you know, he can now not go back to them and tell them that, you know, guys, support me. I'll give you an existent post like he did last time.
Okay.
So the only way now, he must have seats which are anchored in law, so that now he can tell them that, you see, guys, this is what we are going to give you.
Okay.
So some of those issues are coming into play. And, you know, look at even the land equation. Do we have, you know, all you need to do is to get the Ndung'u reports taken to cabinet. Then they do a cabinet memo, discuss it, then we draft a bill and Duale presents it in parliament. Then you know, that way you will have the powers of law to address some of those issues.
The problem
TJRC the same.
That has been the point I wanted to come to, because we have a document paid for by the taxpayer, more or less the South African model, and it details or contains what has been happening or transpired between 1963 and 2008, gathering dust. I mean, what commitment is there in this BBI by the ruling Jubilee government that isn't in the TJRC report that they ignored for the past 7 years and is in parliament gathering dust, just waiting for implementation? Why all the dishonesty then? And why are they sure that this document, the BBI, the coming together, can offer the much needed clean political break? There
is no political will. But you know, TJRC mentions all these people you see around. They are all in it. The Ndung'u report, they're all there. They got, Raila got molasses land in Kisumu. Kenyatta was given a beach plot. Kalonzo has Yatta. Musalia has his plot in Gulf, part of Kakamega. So they are all part of it. So who is going to sit in cabinet and approve a report which indicts them?
Okay, you're talking about a forest that's full of
no, they are all there. So it becomes very difficult. Okay. And you know, the good thing is the report was saying where you cannot give back the land, you give the cash equivalent. You know? They will do an evaluation and you're able to pay. But you know, for as long as we don't have the moral courage to address those issues, they will not go away. You cannot have the issue of absentee landlords at the cost. And imagine that guys will keep quiet when you own thousands and thousands of acres of land in Nairobi, yet you never came from there. And you know, they are supposed to be squatters in their own homeland, you know. It can't work. So we will need the courage, you know. We must have, and you know, the first step was making a public apology, which President Uhuru did on behalf of all the presidents who have been there. So that was a major step. Two, we need now to do issues of restitution. And the good thing is quite a number of the fellows who are detained have been paid. You know, there are others who have not been paid because there have been challenges here and there. But we need to look for money. And those who went to court, they got awards. We need to pay them off. Then we sit and gradually implement. And some of the things, the way DG said here, are administrative. You know, you don't appoint your own clansmen and then you tell us you are talking about inclusivity.
Well laid out in the social contract. I'm talking about the 2010 constitution, which always is the best referring point if we are to address our problems. But let me come to you, Honorable Jonathan Mweke, because it seems that at the moment, as we speak, acknowledging that there is less confidence in the ruling Jubilee Party that is brought about by the handshake. Further, what even makes it even more, I mean, the rift more widening is what has developed over the past week. I'm talking about the fake arms deal amounting to 39 billion Kenya shillings. And the office of the epicenter of this entire, incident that continues to develop is the Deputy President William Ruto's office, and he himself at the fulcrum point of the balance between investigative agencies and his staff at the Harambee House Annex. I mean, what does it say about the country generally? Is it a depiction of a Kenya where the world sees as a country where dodgy deals and dodgy businesses are made. We clean up the money from South Sudan through our banking system. This happens. It's an international firm. And then all points out to the politicization element. How do we get out of this trouble?
I think, Ayob, it's about doing the right thing. You see, even with this whole BBI thing, yes, there's the 9-point agenda that the president and the former prime minister came up with. But when the BBI went around and got views from Kenyans, they found another 20 points that the president and the former prime minister had not thought about. And I think for me, that's where the problem really lies.
Okay.
And those 20 points, they called them notable issues. I'll just mention 3 of them that are very, very important. The first one is Kenyans don't trust their leaders.
Which is equal what Martin mentioned, the will.
Don't trust their leaders. So Kenyans don't trust the police. They don't trust the MPs. They don't trust the governors. They don't trust the president. They don't trust the entire government. They don't trust the judiciary. Kenyans just don't trust their leaders. Why? Because of the things you two gentlemen are talking about.
Okay.
Kenyans see you saying one thing on TV and doing another complete different thing. So you lose credibility and people stop believing you. And when people stop believing you, they stop trusting you.
Okay.
The second thing he said is the youth are feeling completely excluded from the running of this country. So you have BBI where you're saying it's inclusivity, then you're talking about inclusivity of tribes, but then there's a whole other paradigm of the young people in this country. And you know, even Kofi Annan said it's a time bomb. Yeah. And between 18 and 24, I think almost 23% of us are young. Of Kenyans are young, which is way above the average of 18% globally. So the youth are saying, guys, we are completely excluded, and you guys are running around saying you're bringing people together and nobody's asking us anything. And the last thing is what you're saying just now about this
arms deal,
is Kenyans don't follow the law. You know, from the government to the mwananchi, to anybody on the road, guys just now look at the law as something that is a suggestion. I can do it or I cannot do it. But where do they get this kind of feeling from? It's like what you're saying. If somebody can go, and when I read this in the newspapers, I know it's still being investigated. We don't know if it's true or not, so it's alleged. But somebody can go, get a building, pretend the building is DOD, get people in army clothes, and say this is the army general, and craft a deal with foreigners. I mean, that is, if that is not abuse of our law of the land, I don't know what is. And now, what's happening is all Kenyans are watching this, reading it on social media, watching it on TV, listening to it in the radios, and talking about it in their small kamkunjis in the mutaz. And guys are saying, listen, if everybody is breaking the law, why don't we? So we've become a complete lawless country, and we need to get back to factory reset and say, guys, let's go back to our factory settings, let's reset our country, and let's start from scratch, guided by our Constitution 2010. If we just implemented Constitution 2010 and we followed the law, 80% of our problems in this country would go away. Okay,
Martin, politically speaking, I mean, there are some who see that as political motive, as HS did mention when he was interviewed. He said that this was all a political affair, and the DP William Ruto said, I'm not aware of that. The meeting only lasted for 23 minutes. And this again comes hot on the heels of another scandal that involved State House operative who never paid computers that were supplied for by the person who supplied the computers for the Department of Defense, which equally is still a concern. He was the link. And the other 2.5 billion Kenya shillings meant for the tree planting exercise, it all went up in air. And the 2 billion Kenya shillings that was meant for travel expense of the Office of the Presidency could not be accounted for according to the Auditor General. There's a concern, isn't it, generally, that corruption is becoming a way of life, especially from the top office in the land. And how does that have effect in terms of the roll down to the trickling down effect of the other citizens in terms of law-abiding citizenship, the winning Kenyan mentality, and generally the stability of the country?
You know, my neighbors, the Luo say a fish starts rotting from the head. You know, the buck must stop somewhere. So, you know, the first time the president was, he left, it was free for all. And You remember him one time saying, "Munataka nifanye nini?"
That was before the elections.
Yeah.
And recently said,
he threw up his hands in the air and said, "Munataka nifanye nini?" So he is trying to salvage his image, but the damage has already been done. You know, the truth is the country has gone bonkers. It's free for all, anything goes. And the kind of looting that has happened in 7 years, you know, all the wealth Kibaki built for us, it's all gone. Look at the newspapers, Monday newspapers, especially The Nation. There are 15 to 20 pages, people being auctioned. Now, the banks don't even have any more people to buy those properties. They have no more people to buy the cars they are trying to auction. So you know what is going to happen? The banks will also start collapsing because of the amount of defaults, the huge loans, which nobody is going to pay, you know. You have properties which you can't sell, you have vehicles you can't sell. So the effects of these are going to be felt for a very long time to come. And we were just discussing with him. The mess is all over. Go to lands. You have a minister who wakes up one day and just decides she's closing the registry. You know, she is there with her PS cartels. I mean, that is the greatest earner of revenue for the government. How do you, that you want to close the registry because you want to do audit? Do you close, if the auditors are coming here, do they come and you close this station because the auditors are coming?
Of course, the audit is done.
It's done when everything else is going on. So these ones want to close because they want to do funny things. The entire place has become cartels. The CS is a cartel, the PS and the CAS, you know, it's a mess. So the government is losing revenue. Two, you know, you cannot implement the Big Four agenda of the president because land is very key in this entire thing. City Hall is in a mess. Okay. We have no governor. You can see the mess is there. For a year plus, you can't get approvals for anything. You can't get approval for subdivision. You can't get approvals for building plans in City Hall. So there's no revenue. So, you know, with that kind of nonsense, there is no way you will grow this country. You know, and the moment fellas see you stealing in a big office, the small fellas, when you tell them to steal for you 10 million, they also add their own 10. Because that's how it works, you know. So we allowed all this. And, you know, look at this gun scandal. The same guys went to Merali. They even imitated the president.
And
same guys. They went with motor riders. Can you arrive here and take outriders and drive with GKs and drive to a businessman's premises and collect money? It's not possible. How many people can hack the president's number and imitate the president? What action has been taken to them? Same characters. Now, the same characters are here in the DP's office. And you know, they are dismissing it and saying, but he came for only 23 minutes. You've just heard there is one of the cops who was there has died. You know, so there are a lot of, it's getting even mysterious more. So all those issues, and you know, impunity. What happens? The guy goes to court. He's given a cash bail of $1 million bob. And he has the audacity to come to national television and say this is politics. So, I mean, this is a crime. Clear. You cannot walk around in military fatigue. I mean, how? Not any other person. In vehicles which are having military plates, you know, a civilian, and you have NSIS fellas all over. It's not possible, you know. So all these issues, the rot is very deep.
Okay.
And I don't know how Uhuru will fix it. If you asked me, his priority will not even be the Big Four because he will not achieve the Big Four. It will not even be BBI because there will be no BBI. What he will have sought to do now is to fight corruption.
Okay.
That is the legacy that he can now, that one is achievable, and he will tell Kenyans, Kibaki build infrastructure, I fought corruption. Anything else, the Big Four, it will not be there. The houses, it takes you so long to build houses. But how do you build houses without approvals? How do you build houses without titles? Because the titles are stuck in lands. The cartel of the CS and the PS are saboting. They cannot, it cannot move. So there is nothing, you know.
Okay, Honorable Mweke, if I may come to you as we conclude here with regards to your final remarks, there is also the important element of the factional divisions politically, and that's, of course, what's happening in the ruling Jubilee Party and on the other end at the ODM level in regard to the handshake. But the central system of all these happen instances are two key individuals, the president and Raila Odinga, the president more so. We can't get into his head, but I'm sure he has the capacity to see all this and perhaps come up with rigorous and radical surgery to perhaps address all these problems. Talk of corruption, 1 trillion Kenya shillings has been spent between 2013 and 17. Of that, in this report by the Auditor General, in the last 5 years, Kenya possibly lost 5 trillion Kenya shillings to corrupt individuals, cartel fueled by leaky government processes and incorrigibly corrupt public service. He talks about government spending. This is a report funded by the taxpayer, lays out the estimated receipts and the actual receipts of the ordinary revenue between financial years 2011, 12, 12, 13, 13, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16. It goes on, not acting upon, still gathering dust without a trace. Talks about the Eurobond, IBC not in shape. It is requesting for about what it says, money for the boundaries review. And we seem to have this particular BBI problem that appears to be a priority for the two key individuals and the country. How do we take the energy from that and address the issues that are pertinent to the common man?
Well, corruption is part of that. That's in the BBI, but it can be addressed because there is a chapter called Chapter 6 in the Constitution.
Integrity.
Leadership and integrity. I think it is the most ignored, the most left out, the most abused chapter in our Constitution. If we can begin just to implement our laws, like I said earlier, Ayub, all these problems would go away. I mean, give credit where credit is due. The government, the president started in his second term the fight against corruption. We've seen very senior executives dragged to court. Nobody has been jailed yet. There are no convictions. But I mean, give credit where credit is due.
Okay.
It's a first where you've seen a governor, Kiambu, been impeached, and the deputy governor take over, and life continues, and people are beginning to see, you know what, there's a consequence to the stuff, to this stuff. You've seen the governor of Nairobi today, an impeachment motion has been put against him. We don't know how far it will go, but I mean, it sends a message that, you know what, guys, you just can't take public resources for private use and get away with it. What we now need to do is do what Martin is saying. We are scratching the surface. I think we have our heads thinking in the right direction by saying, guys, even BBI, if for anything, what BBI has brought is it's brought a national conversation. People are now beginning to talk about things that they never used to talk about before.
Okay.
It's brought some sort of confidence where Raila Odinga can go to Central Province and Uhuru is always at the port in Kisumu, where he would never have been able to...
talking about his brother.
and he'd never be able to have done that. So there are some positives in this thing. But you know, we are so disheartened about the rot, about how far down we have sunk, and Kenyans now are a little impatient and they want things to move a little faster. And that's why you see even me saying here, it's not that I'm against BBI. What I'm saying is BBI is so good, why can't we start implementing it tomorrow? Why can't you say the things for the referendum to fanya wakati wa referendum? All these other 90% things, why can't the president call a meeting tomorrow at State House and say, guys, we are talking about devolution, 50% will go to the counties. You don't need a referendum from that. The budget process is beginning in the National Assembly next month. Can you just tell Duale and Murkomen, give the counties 50%? I mean, let's start doing these things now. That's what's going to bring the credibility. That's the shot that we need in the arm of Kenya.
Okay, as we conclude, Martin, coming to you on this important element, because I just want an analytical perspective politically on President Uhuru Kenyatta, because he has a lot in his hands at the moment, a lot to implement as a country, and he wants the good out of the game that's currently being played in the political arena. One, how does he balance the political attention between central Kenya and the country, because he serves at the office of the presidency, he's a national figure, he's a symbol of national unity. His backyard apparently has some sort of political uncertainties in regards to who takes over from the mantle, from him, the mantle in 2022 and beyond, some sort of worry. Perhaps that might explain why we had the Sagana meeting. And then he has his brother on board, and he needs to divide the attention between Raila Odinga and the Deputy President, William Ruto. And of late, the Jubilee Party unity has been fragmenting in regard to the falling apart of the members of the party. How does he do all these three?
First of all, in terms of the backyard, you know, he had completely refused to do PG. Although the other day they had called for a PG, but they cancelled it. Then unfortunately, the party
because of
SG
the Moi burial, as stated.
The Moi burial, then the SG got involved in an accident. So that is a bit of a challenge. But you know, the president has not been engaging the MPs. And you know, the MPs are politicians. They have issues. which they would want to raise with the president one-on-one. So that created a rift, and they found comfort in the DP who was readily available. So the DP will listen to them. He will be able to address some of the concerns and the issues. And by default, he ended up even taking over some of those support. Although somebody should have advised the DP, you don't inherit somebody's wife when he's still alive in the African culture.
And the president did say that.
Yeah, you know, that is not the way.
Why are you talking about the succession? I'm still alive.
No, they don't do it. We don't do it that way. Issue number 2, the balancing between Raila and Ruto. Mm-hmm. You just ask the successful polygamists. They'll tell you how you do it. You marry a second wife and you still have the other one. And keep the first one happy and the second one also. So he needs to look for those ones. They will advise you how it's done.
Okay, but politically, so, the concern has been, Honorable Mweke did mention at one point in his submission about the conduct of the establishment. More than 60 parties registered by the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, and that's between 1991 and 2020, ever since the opening up of the democratic space. However, when you come to the Jubilee Party status at the moment, NASA is on deathbed, as per Mudavadi. It's oozing blood. According to Wetangula, it's a moribund organization politically. Then if these two political entities do not hold up by 2022, it's a perpetual continuity of the political failure, isn't it, in this case, the political culture? No,
it will settle with time. But you know, even in America, it's not that they have two parties.
There are many parties.
There are so many parties, but the dominant parties are two.
The Republicans and the Democrats.
Yes, even in Britain, the dominant parties are 3, but there are so many other parties. Yeah. So with time, you know, even here, the formations will naturally be always 2. And it has been that way from 1963.
Okay.
Of course, there was KADU and then KANU, and then there was APP, which ultimately dissolved and got into KANU.
Okay.
So the formations will always be 2. But with time, you know, America has been independent for 250 years plus. We have only been independent for close to 60 years.
Okay.
So you cannot compare us with the Americans, you know. We will take time, but ultimately we'll reach there. So what we are going through is a growth process, you know. So we make the missteps, we make all these things. With the time, people now will stick on ideologies.
Okay.
And with time, they also have their own issues. And you know, if you, and the mobilization will always be done. We talk about ethnicity here.
Okay.
They talk about race. You know, if you have, when Obama was running for president, the Democrats voted 97%. When Clinton was running for president, the turnout of the blacks was very low.
Okay.
And she was on the same ticket, you know. So, you know, all those dynamics come into place. When you have a particular candidate running, you will see the Hispanics turning out. You will see a particular group turning out.
Okay.
So all these issues, we are headed there.
Okay.
But, you know, of course, there will be the fight. You know, even the Americans had the American Civil War. We have also had our own tribal clashes here at a smaller scale. So we are headed where they also, where they had, you know. So it's gradual.
Okay.
But of course, we want some of the things to be done. We have, that's why we are insisting. The constitution we have is very progressive.
One of the
so why don't we implement it the way it is? Then we see where we can strengthen. If we regulate some of the regulations, you know, like the land ceiling on parliament and all those things, enact those regulations and operationalize that constitution, the leadership and integrity chapter 6 that DG is talking about, then you will never have all these issues. You don't even need BBI to address some of those issues.
Asante, that is despite the nationalism election year ahead in the United States of America, Salvini in Italy, talking about Viktor Orban in Hungary, and equally the nationalism that's across Europe and in the United States of America. Honorable Mweke, thank you so much for coming. I do appreciate your time.
Karibu.
And Martin Andati, political commentator, governance expert. Asante sana. And thank you to Professor Edward Kisiangani, who joined us by way of phone here on the program in regard to his input here on News Compass, and time has beaten us as ever. From me, Ayub Abdikadir and the team here in Lavington. We'll see you next week by the grace of God. Bye-bye.